Alright guys, so now we're going to move to the back side of the unit test review. My son just woke up, so we'll see how long he lets me do this for. So I kind of already did the work, but the first question says, Jason jumped off a cliff into the ocean. His height is modeled by the function, where t is the time in seconds and h is the height in feet. Round all answers to the nearest tenth. So how long did it take for Jason to reach his maximum height? If you guys need to draw a picture, then please draw a picture. So this is Jason, he's jumping off a cliff. Technically, this would act like the y-axis, and then the water would be like the x-axis. So remember that time is the x-axis, height is the y-axis. So the first question's asking how long did it take for him to reach his maximum height. And remember that that's referring to the vertex and the time part of the vertex. So vertex is time and height. So if we want time, that means we want the x of the vertex, and we use this formula. So I did the opposite of b divided by 2 times a. Here's the equation up here. And I got 1.1 seconds. So that's for part A. Part B says, what was the highest point that Jason reached? So now it's asking for the highest. So it's still the vertex, but now we want the height of the vertex. So we want the y. And since we know time, that means we know the x. So that's what I wrote right here. Since we know time, x equals 1.1, plug it into the equation and solve. So every time you saw t in the equation that was given to us, which is still way up here, I plugged in 1.1. So when I plugged that in, I got technically 256.8 feet. And there's all the work right there if you guys want to pause the video, or you can rewind and go back. Part C says, when will he hit the water? So remember that hitting the water would mean that his height in the air is nothing, it's 0. So that means we're setting the equation equal to 0 and solving for the t. The best way to do that here would be to use a quadratic formula. So I labeled out what a, b, and c were, and then I plugged them into the quadratic formula. So the opposite, the opposite of 34 plus or minus 34 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. So I just kind of used calculator on all of this. I know there's some big numbers here, but remember you're using a calculator. So just add those together. You get 13,956, and you just take the square root of that. It's not going to be a perfect number. It comes out to a decimal, which is 118.1. Okay, now when it gets to this part, since it's a plus or a minus, you have to remember that you're going to choose one. Now think about it. If the bottom is a negative, the answers always have to come out to be positive. It doesn't make sense if they're not positive answers. You can't have negative feet or negative time. So if the bottom's already a negative, it'd have to be a negative over a negative to make the answer come out to a positive. So you have to choose. Yeah, baby. You want some applesauce? Okay, I'll give you applesauce. So if I had negative 34 plus 118.1, that would give me a positive number. That I don't want a positive number. I need a negative number, because a negative over a negative is positive. So that means I'm going to choose the minus. So negative 34 minus 118.1 divided by negative 32, I got 4.8 seconds. So there's all the work. If you want to go ahead and take a look at it all, pause it, rewind it. That's for number 13. Number 14 is talking about the water balloon, how it's catapulted into the air. So there's the equation. How high is a balloon after 1 second? That just means that if they gave you time, you just plug in 1 for time, 1 for t, and solve it. So that one's pretty straightforward. You should have got 20.7 feet. Part B is saying, what is the maximum height of the balloon? So remember, maximum refers to vertex. So do we want time or height? We want height. But in order to find height, we have to know time. So I do have to still find the x. So I use this formula. I get negative 22 divided by 2 times negative 3.5. That comes out to 3.1 seconds. That's not the answer, but I did need that for time. So once I know that time is 3.1, that's the x, so plug that in for technically the time in the equation, 3.1. So once I plugged everything in, simplified it, remember, always use a calculator, I got 36.8 feet. So there's all the work for that one. And then the very last one, when will it hit the ground? Remember that means that the height is at 0. So setting the whole equation equal to 0. So once again, using the quadratic formula, here it is. I labeled out what A, B, and C are. Plug them into the quadratic formula. Use calculators for this part, please. So I got negative 22 plus or minus the square root of 514.8 divided by negative 7. I just stuck this right into the calculator, this part. So the square root of 514.8 is 22.7. Now once again, I have to choose, am I going to use the plus or the minus? If the bottom is already a negative, it has to be a negative over a negative if the answer is going to come out to be a positive. So if I chose plus 22, negative 22 plus 22.7, that would have gave me a positive answer on top. So I can't use plus, so that means I'm going to use the minus. So negative 22 minus 22.7 divided by negative 7, and I got 6.4 seconds. So there's the work on this one. You can pause it, rewind it, whatever you'd like.